What's going on, guys? JNC here with the JNC Rewind number 16. This is WWE No Way Out of 2008. This is the fourth No Way Out of the month that we have covered. We, of course,
the last.
Oh, yeah, and the last. Yeah, so this is going to be, of course, got JNC here. The last program we had done was the NXT TakeOver program review and recap. Some may have noticed, I forgot to mention at the top of the show that we had Joe join us over the phone, and we are doing so today because, of course, the show must go on regardless. But we are going to, of course, continue to do so today. And, so here we are. This is the fourth No Way Out we've done, and, of course, the last that we are doing of the month. It's also the last of the February JNC Rewinds, so I hope you guys enjoyed these. Thought it was a good month. Covered some good shows, mostly good shows, but
Yeah, I mean, we had No Way Out 2000. We had No Way Out 2001. Those were just killer shows, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously No Way Out 2007 was a dud, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it kind of just a little bit.
But at least the main event was good.
Yeah, at least that was the one takeaway, or one of the only takeaways.
Yeah, and now without further ado, let's get 08.
Yeah, we're just gonna not really have many positive takeaways from St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but
I forgot about that. That's how bad it was.
Yeah. So I guess we're just gonna go away from there. So this is WWE No Way Out of 2008. So of course we had done, as previously mentioned, we had done 2000, 2001, 2007, and now 2008. 2007 was a pretty solid show. 2001 was actually that was a great show. And then 2007, not as much, but 2008, we'll get into that. So let's go on with the preliminaries here, shall we? This would be the second pay-per-view event of 2008, this being, of course, the first being the Royal Rumble, a show which we covered during our series of Rumble shows. If you haven't yet, be sure to check that out. We had a great time doing that one. And of course, cheap plug number one. So at the Royal Rumble, we saw the surprise return of John Cena, as he'd make the surprise entry at number 30. He'd go on to win the Rumble match and choose the WWE Champion at the time, Randy Orton, as his WrestleMania opponent. But for Cena, he decided he didn't want to wait all the way until Mania. Instead, he'd opt to take his title opportunity on this night against Orton. This night being No Way Out of 2008. Randy Orton, of course, the man who kayfabe took him out of action for months, when in reality Cena had suffered a torn pec, which would end at the time his 19-month title reign as WWE Champion. So this would all lead to this night. And then on the SmackDown side of things, that was for the Raw side of things. For the SmackDown side of things, the main program at the time was featuring World Heavyweight Champion Edge and Rey Mysterio. These two faced off at the Royal Rumble the month prior, which saw Edge retain the world title after his girlfriend Vicky Guerrero got involved, where there was the 619 spot where Rey connected with Vicky, who was trying to save Edge from the move. Off the distraction, he'd go for the West Coast pop with Edge countering with the spear in midair. Great finish to a match that we both felt in some ways where it was rather underwhelming when we were covering that. Remember we had discussed that we thought that match was going to be a bit more than it was, or a bit more that I had previously remembered it. I thought it was a bit more than what we got.
Right. Yes. Very surprising how much of a dud, kind of, up until the ending, obviously.
Yeah, because obviously it was far from the worst match I'd ever seen. But I mean, for the two guys that were involved, and I thought in a lot of ways that these guys actually did have good chemistry, or their styles would mesh in a way you'd think they'd put on some entertaining matches. So I was actually really surprised how underwhelming I guess I thought that match was, and especially in hindsight, now, seeing it again, at the time I probably would have thought a little bit higher of it.
Right.
So then the rematch would be set up on the February 1st edition of Friday Night SmackDown by acting general manager Theodore Long. Vicky was the actual GM at the time, but was out for the evening selling the injury sustained at the Rumble. And then the main program on the ECW brand, the WWE ECW, was between ECW World Champion Chavo Guerrero and CM Punk. on the January 22nd edition of ECW, the show right before the Royal Rumble, with the help from Edge. Chavo defeated Punk to win the ECW title, so the rematch was scheduled to take place here. And also, this show marks the return of the Elimination Chamber match. The first time we'd seen the Chamber in over a year. Probably felt longer than that back then. The last time they had done a Chamber match was at December to December of 2006. And once again, a show and match, which we covered previously. Check that out. But on this night, there would be not one, but two Elimination Chamber matches. One for the SmackDown side, featuring The Undertaker, Batista, MVP, Finlay, The Great Khali, and Big Daddy V. And then one for the Raw side, featuring Jeff Hardy, Chris Jericho, Triple H, Umaga, Shawn Michaels, and JBL. In order to determine who would go on to face both the World Heavyweight and WWE Champion at WrestleMania 24. And without further ado, let's get into this one.
Let's roll.
So, of course, this was No Way Out 2008, as pointed out a few times already. This was a WWE World Wrestling Entertainment pay-per-view. The brands featured on this would be Raw, ECW, and SmackDown. This took place. Sorry for that. February 17th of 2008, so already 12 years removed now. It took place in Los Angeles. Not Los Angeles. Damn it. Las Vegas, Nevada, at the Thomas and Mack Center. 15,240 was the attendance for the night. Then 329,000 was the buy rate, which is up from the previous year's 218,000. So they're up a good 111,000 in buys.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference from the previous year, actually. But I think what helped was probably the return of the Elimination Chamber. I'm assuming that probably brought that up a bit.
Definitely.
And your commentators for the show would be, for Raw, you'd have Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross. You'd have Michael Cole and Jonathan Coachman for SmackDown. And you'd have Joey Styles and Taz for ECW. Not a lot of shows we've done so far with Joey Styles and Taz on commentary.
Yeah, I think the last one we did was that 08 Rumble, which they only...
They only called the Rumble match.
Yeah, they only called the Rumble match. Other than that...
Yeah.
I wonder why ECW didn't get an ECW title match at the Rumble that year.
Yeah, because they put the champion in the match.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I know if I were them, I would have been like so annoyed that I had to sit there the whole entire night and I'd just get to talk like during the Rumble. I mean, they had all three teams on, but it's like we don't even get to call a match. Like we just get to be a part of like a match with like all these other people in there where you gotta like take turns talking and stuff. I would not have enjoyed that, sitting there for like those 3 hours. So we start out with the show here with the opening contest, which would be, well, speaking of ECW, it would be the ECW World Championship on the line. It'd be Chavo Guerrero defending against CM Punk.
Which obviously Joey Styles and Taz actually get to call this match.
Yep, this is what could have been at the Rumble, maybe.
Yeah, obviously. I don't know why it wasn't.
During Punk's entrance, there would be a video package highlighting 2 weeks prior on ECW. CM Punk had called out Chavo Guerrero demanding his rematch for the ECW title. Chavo would come out to respond by saying that he would indeed get his rematch, but at No Way Out. He said that because Punk had embarrassed him last week during his championship fiesta celebration, he was going to embarrass him. Then ECW general manager at the time, Armando Estrada, would announce that both Punk and Guerrero would face off in the first ever, and I guess only, Gulf of Mexico match, where the winner has to throw their opponent into the Gulf of Mexico. Very bizarre stuff.
Yep. Very, very, very bizarre. It's also kind of funny how the two people who were fighting for the championship fought in the last show before in the go home show. Just weird. That rivalry was just in a weird spot.
Yeah, it was really weird. Because Chavo got his title shot, whatever, but then Edge helped him win it. I guess they had the La Familia. I mean, it wasn't like that yet completely, but I mean it was like that group of like Guerrero, Edge, and like the Hawkins Ryder and like Vicky and them. But yeah, it was just weird. Like I get like that side. Like he just did the favor, whatever. He just helped him win or whatever and whatnot. But yeah, that was just weird. It's weird that Punk lost the title to Chavo of all people.
Yeah, no. Punk only had that title for like what, 3 months, 4?
I think he had it for like 5.
5?
He had it for a bit. It just didn't feel like really important. And when I say Chavo of all people, like not to take anything away from Chavo, I actually think he's a very underrated performer in a lot of ways. I just say that because he was like a SmackDown guy, then all of a sudden he just got thrown into that show. Which honestly, that was a common really occurrence because I mean it seemed like when they had those mid card guys or maybe even undercard guys, they just throw them on there if they had nothing else better for them. Honestly.
Yeah, at that point, it looked like it was actually better for Chavo since he captured the title.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I agree there. Yeah. Then Punk would win that Gulf of Mexico match. Don't really have much else to say about it. That. In this one side, you'd have CM Punk, who was he was still on the rise this time, still early in his WWE tenure. And you had Chavo Guerrero, the veteran, the ring general. It was a decent opener, but for me, it felt like this match could have been a bit more. They weren't allotted a lot of time for this. Having Chavo beat Punk clean was also an interesting move. He'd, of course, hit the frog splash to pick up the win and retain the title.
After reversing the Hurricane.
Yeah. So 7 minutes, 6 seconds was the recorded time here. Chavo would retain the ECW title. 2 3/4 from me. It's a decent opener, but once again, I feel like it could have been a bit more.
Yeah, I went 2.5. Actually, I had no really problems with it. Yeah, I could have gone longer, but it was solid either way.
No, it was okay, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Tolerable, more than acceptable.
Oh yeah.
Next, we headed over to Michael Cole and Jonathan Coachman. And then they do, of course, the little visual of Las Vegas. Yeah, I called it Vegas this time, not Los Angeles. Then they go back to the previous edition of Friday Night SmackDown where there was the Valentine's Day segment with Edge and Vicky Guerrero. And this would see Edge propose to Vicky and ask her to marry him. Rey Mysterio would interrupt as he would not be the biggest fan of this. Edge would start to attack him, but Mysterio would trip him into the middle rope and deliver a 619 as Edge was getting up. Mysterio was looking to take him out, but Edge would move out of the way, and instead, accidentally, Rey would take out Vicky, who was already seated in the wheelchair. The next, we'd have Mike Adamle interview Rey Mysterio, where he'd get his thoughts on the incident from a couple nights ago. Mysterio would say that he didn't mean it, and he's expecting Vicky to want him to apologize once again, but he said he wasn't. Then Adamle would point out the report of Mysterio's torn bicep injury. Mysterio would show everyone the bruise, and yeah, it looked pretty bad, actually.
Yeah,
it looked like I hurt a ton.
Yeah. Also, during that Ray Edge segment, that's kind of on Edge, man. If he doesn't attack him first, that never happens.
Well, yeah, but you know how it always is going to come back with the heels. It's like, oh, you did this to me.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just like, it's not getting technical here.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that torn bicep, yeah, I saw that. I was like,
Yeah. So while this is going on, Floyd Mayweather comes up to him, and the two would embrace. The next, we'd have Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler asking the fans who they thought was going to win the Elimination Chamber match for Raw later in the night in a poll on WWE.com. Then they'd show Jericho in the back getting prepared for later on, which was strange for them doing so with the poll and showing Jericho and everything. That was only strange because it's like, why have... Because they're just having JR and like Jerry Lawler talk about all that stuff, then they just cut right back to Cole and Coach for just like the chamber. They're just talking as the chamber's first being lowered, then they just cut randomly right back to them. Little stuff, little detail. Like it's not really anything important. That was just a little weird to me.
There was a lot of weird cut-ins between the commentary, if you know, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, so like just little stuff like that. It's like it's the little thing